Should be good. Yep, there we go. Okay, perfect. Great. Welcome back. What we're going to do now is just dive into a kind of a 12th of what the Thriving Michigan curriculum is kind of all about. So, purpose or survival. I want to just dive into that just a little bit to set the groundwork for a conversation that we're going to have. Somebody come up and join me, and we'll kind of get into the discussion part of this in just a moment. But I want to set us up with one more thing. So you could be in a place about this whole idea about purpose. About do we have one? Is it clear? If we don't, how do you start to think about that? What really goes into a great purpose? And so we're going to talk about that here. So, assuming I didn't get out of order on these slides, I think we're good. So the thing about purpose is that you want real alignment. Okay, there's a book that's called The Three Marriages by a guy named David Whyte, and he's known as the Bard of the Boardroom. He's a poet that writes about business. It's weird, but it's really good stuff. So his book, The Three Marriages, basically asserts that all of us have three lifelong commitments that are like marriage. There is marriage in the traditional sense, and then there's your career. What you do. That is another lifelong kind of relationship that you have that you want to grow and develop and have be great, just like a traditional marriage. And the third marriage he talks about is your relationship with yourself. Like who you are for you in the quiet times, when there's no distractions and there's just you. For some people, that's a deeply spiritual thing or a religious thing. It's kind of different for everybody, but that relationship, that's definitely with you your whole life. And so he argues that proactively managing and developing all three of those marriages is one of the things that we need to do as human beings. It's consistent with our happiness and feeling like we're a good person, living the life that we really want to live. And he says that a lot of times we struggle with it because we hold it as three separate spheres, three separate spaces that have to be balanced against each other, right? You gotta, work less so that you can pay more attention to your marriage, or make more time for religion or spirituality or whatever it is for you, right? He says that's a little bit of a construct that doesn't work very well. That what the real art is finding the marriage of the marriages, aligning all three of them, so that your work on one is consistent with all the others. So you're not doing career that is separate from religion or spiritual or who you are, and that your marriage is set up to complement the others, and the others are set up to complement your traditional marriage, right? Can I get that space? So that's what he suggests is our ideal. And I'm going to borrow that framework for just a minute to kind of talk about purpose. And ideally, when you're really on to purpose, it's something that in the core of you believe that you would do it for free, that it is something that matters to you, not just something that you enjoy, like a hobby, but something that has meaning, real meaning. And so whatever that is for you, the art of crafting a purpose for a business is that it's not just that for you. That's exactly where to start, but you want to then find that for the other people that are part of your company. And sometimes there's a greater purpose when you get into conversation with people that is even bigger than the thing, or even more inspiring than the thing that you had, that can come up in that second circle there of organization. But whatever it is, you want to not even just leave it there and have it be something that applies to community. And you can define that as big as you want. Could be your neighborhood, could be Alpena, could be the whole region of the state, the whole country, the whole world. Whatever that thing is. But usually this is something that is rooted in a deeply felt universal human value. This transcends politics. This is a human thing, right? And so even if you've got a political persuasion on this, right? That all we need to do is defeat those Democrats or defeat those Republicans or whatever it is that you've got. There's actually something deeper. The value that comes from that is universal. And so if you can tap into whatever that is for you and find expression for it in your company, within the community, that's the root of a really tremendous purpose, right? And some of this is created, right? It's not like you have to peel back all the layers of the onion and discover your true self. And you can just pick something, right? John Tucker, who's the CEO of Dave's Killer Bread, he never cared about recidivism at all. For him, the big awakening, when he came in to run the company, was he was standing next to somebody on the bread line, and he was just kind of coming in to be the CEO and wanted to get to know people, and said, "Hey, what do you like about working here?" And the guy said, "Mr. Tucker, let me tell you." And he pulled out his wallet, and he pulled out a picture, and he showed it to him, and it was of his wife and his kid. And he said that this job broke the cycle of recidivism for me. This job gave me my life. Without this place, I wouldn't have this. And that was when John Tucker said, that's what I'm doing here. It's not about growing a company. It's about helping people to get this back, to build their lives again. And so for him, it was just this bigger than anything he thought he could be part of. And there it was. And he was about to be the CEO of that company. And now he speaks, he's amazing. He's just amazing if you get to meet him. He's a very cool guy. But that's the thing. That's what is there. The opportunities, whether it's the cultural stuff that we were talking about, or whether it's any of the challenges that we talked about that Alpena is facing, or any other challenge that you want to tackle, that's what purpose is and can be, okay? You to the organization to community. Now, purpose is great, but the thing that's even beyond that I would challenge you to take a look at is vision. Because again, remember, the visual cortex is such a big deal, right? So just like we can see that fruit tree, if you can articulate a vision for your purpose, right? In 5-10 years, this is what could be possible. If people can see it, literally see it in the mind's eye, you start to plug in the dopamine and you start to get them excited and motivated, and let's go make it happen. That's the power of this kind of stuff that can engage everybody, no matter what your actual business is. It could be consistent with the business, could be recidivism to bread. But whatever that is, having a clear purpose and vision can do that. And so I would encourage you to take a look and see, are you already doing it? Is there something else that you could be doing? How can you raise the bar? That's kind of what we want to look at for this particular thing. And I want to give you one example of a very compelling vision. It's a brief story. This is Ray Anderson. He's the CEO of a company called Interface Carpet. He's now no longer with us, but he was a visionary leader. He had built this little carpet company. They made those little tiles, tile carpet that you see in most business places, little tile carpet. It was a big innovation of him and his company. And he built it to be one of, if not the largest carpet manufacturer in the world, based in Atlanta, Georgia. And in 1994, there was a little bit of a problem that Ray was made aware of. There were a couple of their customers in California that were asking what Interface was doing for the environment. And they were following all of the laws. They were completely in compliance everywhere that they worked. And what more is there? And one of the customers sent a note saying, Interface just doesn't get it. And so Ray was like, well, what don't we get? We're in compliance here. What do you want from me? And there was a couple of people inside the company that thought that it was potentially going to be a threat to the market, that it was a gap, and that they might lose some big accounts because of it. And so we need an internal task force for this. So Ray gave the blessing to create the internal task force, but the person that he deputized to do it asked him to give a speech to kick the whole thing off. And so in 1994, he is sweating bullets because the weeks are ticking by, and he's got to give this big speech to this task force that's supposed to be doing something for the environment, but he doesn't know what the heck to do. So he sort of serendipitously has somebody put one of Paul Hawken's books on his desk, and about 2 weeks before the presentation, he's flipping through the book and he finds this story about St. Matthew's Island. And so in World War II, St. Matthew's Island is one of the islands that's on the Aleutian chain in Alaska. Very remote, very hard to get to, and there was major threats about them being able to station anybody there because they couldn't resupply them. So the solution they found was to put, I think it was 39 or so reindeer on the island so that if they couldn't get supplies, the men could just go shoot a reindeer and there was dinner, and the reindeer would, procreate, and there would be a sustainable source of meat on the island all the time. Worked great. The base was there for many years, but after World War II, there was no need to keep it up, and so they all took off, but the reindeer remained. And so the biologists that had set up that experiment couldn't get back very often, but they came back, I think it was 10 years later, and what started as a herd of 30 or so reindeer had become 6,000 reindeer. There's no natural predators on the island, right? Except for the soldiers who were no longer there. So with no predators, it just ballooned, and it was this thriving, amazing thing. But you could sort of see that the trees were getting eaten pretty bad, and the moss that was growing wasn't as lush as it once was. And so they came back again 3 years later to find that there were only about 14 reindeer left. It was just a big mud heap, no vegetation anywhere. They had totally, it's called overreach and collapse. So he's reading about this story in St. Matthew's Island, and the point that Paul Hawkins makes in the book is that that's what business is doing to the earth, right? Now, whether you agree with that or not, that was what the case was. And Ray had a little bit of what he calls a spear in the chest moment, that he, as the captain of one of the largest carpet manufacturers in the world, that's an extremely fossil fuel intensive business that has tremendous implications on sending, I think it was 600 tons of carpet scrap to the landfill every day. And he was realizing that stuff doesn't go away. There is no away. That'll be around for 10,000 years. And so he says, whoa, like it's someday, he actually says in the book, someday they're going to put guys like me in jail. That legal compliance for him wasn't enough. And so for him, that was a major awakening for purpose. Now, I'm not talking about go be environmentalists, right? I'm just saying for him and for his story, that was where it was. And so he decided to drop a major bombshell when he finally gave that speech by telling his team that Interface Carpet was going to be the world's first restorative enterprise. That's the purpose that he found, restorative enterprise. And what that meant for him was that we are going to give back more to the environment because we exist. Not just carbon neutral, not just neutral, not net zero, but actually positive. And they had no idea at all how to do it. And so the challenge that he gave to this room full of people was, I want to know by when. We're going there, you tell me by when. And they had 2 days to put a date on it. And the date they came up with was 2020. So it hasn't happened yet. They're still working on it. But what happened in the interim was a level of innovation, a level of developing new processes and all kinds of things within the company that had Interface Carpet run laps around its competition for 15 years. They are so head and shoulders ahead of anybody else in terms of the efficiency that they can do, and all of this because there's that major vision. So it's not do-gooder environmental stuff. He had built a totally successful company that had never known the kind of success that they knew after he got this purpose. So it's just an interesting example, and we have Jackie and several others are reading his book. It's called Confessions of a Radical Industrialist. And it tells the story of all of this kind of stuff, and it's really incredible. It's really incredible to see the power of a vision within the organization. And everybody at Interface is still working as hard and fast as they can to actually get there by 2020. So it continues to animate the organization. So and that is an example, a good case study, and we're going to now take a quick break. I just need to reset the stage, and we're going to hear from one more of our sponsors before we kind of change the setup here and get into a bit more of a conversation about this, okay? So hang tight. We're just going to do this real fast. So Jackie, please. Now let's go ahead and flip the lights, if we can, to the second setting.
Okay, well, you guys are setting up. If you don't mind, I'm going to say a few things. So I told you, please keep an open mind. I know some of you are thinking, yeah, we're already doing this, and some of you are thinking, this is hokey. So I really appreciate that you're all still in your seats. I have been, I guess, a student of a lot of this for a long, long time. And we've brought a lot of this into the chamber, and I didn't really know, and into my personal life, and I didn't really know that it had this whole concept of conscious capitalism. But once I started talking with Nathan, and this is the third time I've heard this actual presentation, and each time I think this is piece of a kind of a year-long program. And so the people that are tuning in and that will be watching this later on or are watching it live right now, and I'm part of that group, we're actually all part of a year-long program where we're really diving deeper into this, because it's not something that you can really achieve in just 1 hour or 2 hours. And so the way that this works is each month, there will be a similar presentation like you guys just saw for the community that's hosting it. And then the second half of the day, or the morning, will be a presentation like you're about to see. So it'll really focus on a part of one of those pillars. And so Nathan will talk about that with our other guests that we have. So this part would change in each of the communities, and we'll talk more after this, and you guys will get information about how you can continue to watch some of these events or get involved in that. And before we get to that, I do want to invite Michelle Tittman, there she is, from Northwood University up. They are our other sponsor for this morning, and she's just going to say a few quick things.
As she said, I'm Michelle Tittman. I'm Program Center Manager for the Adult Degree Program for Northwood University. We were very excited to hear that Thriving Michigan was coming to Alpena for their launch event, and we were even more excited to be able to have the opportunity to sponsor the event because we felt that Northwood's mission, our Northwood idea, goes hand in hand right with conscious capitalism. Northwood's mission is to develop the future leaders of a global free enterprise society. And the Northwood idea specifically is to teach our students the importance of moral and individual responsibility, and also to focus on my favorite course going through there was the philosophy class that I took going through Northwood. And another student who graduated last May actually happened to write a letter to our academic dean upon his graduation. He said the same thing. That was my favorite course, and he just went on and on about how much this philosophy course influenced him. And one of the things he mentioned in the letter was, I wish every American had to take this course, because the information offered in the course could probably change our country for the better. I'm actually also happy to introduce Jim Stewart, who both of these students, the one who wrote the letter, and Nick Monti, he's our professor for the Alpena section of the Philosophy of American Enterprise course, and he came over here from Gaylord today to attend the event because he was excited also to hear that the launch event was being held here in Alpena. So just wanted to give one example also of something Northwood does that implements the conscious capitalism, just to give you an idea of that we do walk the walk. We don't just talk the talk. Down on our main campus in Midland, Michigan, we have an Excel program where we encourage students to get out into the community and volunteer, get involved in extracurriculars. That might be getting involved in some boards, volunteering at nursing homes, food banks, things like that. We want students to learn through experience how important community involvement is in professional growth. We feel it's so important that we developed a transcript. We call it a student development transcript, and we actually track that involvement. And the hope is that they take their learning experience, how important that is to get involved in the community, and when they go on to employment, they continue that and stay involved with their community through their employment also. So again, just a good example of how we implement conscious capitalism through Northwood, how it ties in the Northwood idea with Thriving Michigan, conscious capitalism. Again, just so grateful to be able to be a part of this. Thank you for coming to Alpena, having launch event. Thank you to the Chamber for bringing Thriving Michigan to us.
All right, so at this time, the second part of the program, and we will get done on time, I'd like to invite Mike Mahler up, and he and Nathan are going to have a conversation about how First Federal is already putting into practice a lot of these things that we've talked about. Mike is the CEO of First Federal of
Yes,
Northern
sir.
Michigan, and we reached out to him because we knew that they were already, as are a lot of businesses in the community, we knew they were already putting into practice much of what you heard about today. So I will turn this over to these two.
Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you, Jackie.
So let's start, Mike, if you would, by just let's give people kind of a sense of First Federal and just the basics on the business so that we're just all familiar with what it is that you do.
Okay, so I'm the CEO of First Federal. We're a 8-branch bank located in headquartered in Alpena, Michigan. Our service area is kind of all of Northeast Lower Michigan. I've been involved with the bank for about 13 years now, and I think most people here probably already have an indication of who I am and where I work. I do think, though, just before we get started here, I'm flattered that when Jackie was, conjuring this whole program up, working with you, collaborating on it, that she even considered us as potentially an organization to feature here today, which I guess reinforces a lot of the things that I've been doing and we as an organization have been doing for a long time, that it's being recognized in the community, at least on the part of Jackie anyway. So for that, I'm grateful.
Yeah, well, it's if I may, I was taken aback a little bit by the leadership that the Chamber has kind of demonstrated in this. As Jackie told you in the beginning, I did a presentation similar to this for a lot of the Chamber executives, and several have followed up since, but nobody with the determination and fervor of the Alpena Chamber. So I hope that just to acknowledge, you've got a very, very cool organization that you're all part of. So it's flattering to me to be invited to be here for this as well. So I guess we're both flattered to be on the stage.
Absolutely.
That's good. Good. So anyway, so with that, what can you tell us about? Let's sort of go generally with the 4 pillars of conscious capitalism first. Does this map with your experience, and is there anywhere it doesn't?
Well, I don't know, Matt, with my experience, but I mean, philosophically, again, I knew nothing about this until, Nathan and I had a conversation 6 weeks ago, I think, and he was introducing the concept of this to me. And philosophically, the tenets of this very much fit with my own personal beliefs and thinking about an organization, that sort of thing. So that's why I was certainly, it made sense for me to be here today and participate with this. A lot of the things that you talked about this morning clearly organizationally match up with what we do and how we think, how we react to things. So I'll let you maybe dig deeper and I'll answer deeper.
Well, and we've had 2 conversations is all before this. So there were a couple of stories that you told me though in those conversations, and maybe let's just take a look at stakeholders first. Can you kind of say some of what you were saying about how First Federal views your employees, your customers, your community work, all that?
I know it sounds cliche. Everybody talks about their employees are the greatest assets, and there are certainly a lot of organizations in this community who do walk that talk. I think we're one of them. There's nothing that makes me more proud in an employee meeting when we present service awards and I see all the 10, 15, 20-year employees. That to me is a pretty good indication about culture. And for me, everything we do starts with the employees. I mean, at the end of the day, we can't be successful organizationally if our people are not happy with where they work. We don't want people going home every night and having to open the door and toss a hat in. It was a good story. I mean, we don't want that. We want people to come to work engaged, happy to be there, and working as a group and a team committed to one another and committed to, in this case, the community. We view, again, everything we do starts with our employees, but it really is about taking care of our shareholders. We don't, we sometimes laugh in the bank, or I'll make the comment sometimes that our sign doesn't say UNICEF. We are a for-profit enterprise. But we can't, in my estimation, we cannot achieve the kind of profits our shareholders expect with a malcontent workforce without being engaged in the community. So I think that all the stakeholders, which are employees, the community, the businesses that we serve, all benefit from our, I think, living this way, working this way.
Yeah, I agree. And the point that you just made is an important one to put out there, is that there's a lot of people that think that a purpose is enough. that you don't also have to have all of the other things that we teach in MBA programs and all of that, the sound management practices and all of the back-end financials and an actual market for the product that you're selling. All of the basics of business absolutely still apply here. This is just, I think, a little bit of a refocusing on what the point of it all is. And so you are a for-profit company. If you don't return value to your shareholders, you're not going to be in business very long. And so we're not saying that you're going to never mind the shareholders and start working with employees and customers and give them all the value. What stakeholder management is about is just balancing it again, right? That you actually need to be creating value for everybody, including your shareholders, but not just your shareholders. One of the things that they say in the books is that putting your shareholders in sort of that supreme position may be the worst position you can put them in. That balancing it is actually what creates the best returns, even just for them, but better returns for everybody. So a very important point, I think, that it's not that you're going to stop doing business and start doing a social enterprise. It's actually about the kind of the unity and the thing that's the whole being greater than the sum of the parts. So that's an important point that I think we need to call out. So in terms of our conversation around purpose and vision, what would you say is the purpose of the bank?
I think the purpose of the bank is to support our stakeholders. I mean, our communities. I mean, we're very focused on, again, our community's success is to some extent driven by our success, and vice versa. They're both very, very much interwoven. And so for us, I mean, we need to continue to do what we do in order to help our communities be successful, which means not just funding events. I mean, it's about volunteerism. It's about people getting involved, encouraging people to be involved, allowing people to, there's a lot of different things that we as a bank in particular can do. Certainly financial education of the community, that's an important piece of it. We focus on that. We focus on financial support to the community. We focus on, lending money to businesses that are trying to get started and helping them to, as much as we can, be successful in those enterprises. So, there's a lot of different pieces here that we kind of have to service for our success and for our customers and our communities to be successful. And one of the things that Nathan and I did, our initial conversation, when he originally called to introduce himself to me and kind of talk about this event today and maybe what my role might be in it, it was interesting. I shared with Nathan that I've always believed you have to have an organization with a certain mindset and a certain amount of collaboration, cooperation, love. In our bank, we hug each other. I mean, it sounds kind of goofy to say that, but there's a lot of hugging that goes on because we do genuinely care about each other. No, I'm not saying we hug each other and passing in the hallways. No, not like I do. But employee, anniversaries or events. We are a pretty touchy-feely, caring organization, which is really cool. I believe you have to have an organization that is that committed to each other to be successful. I shared with Nathan that, having created that, I think we've done a really nice job of building that. I've never quite seen the financial successes I would expect from that. And the thing that's hard to measure is, absent that culture, maybe the last decade would look very, very different for our organization. I'm sure it would have. I won't stand up and say that we're a top-tier financially performing institution because I'd be disingenuous if I said that. But I will say is that I think that because of the group that we've created, we do better in this last decade, which is really challenging for many, many years for many of us in the banking business. Certainly, we could have probably done a lot worse absent that kind of culture and organization.
Yeah. Well, and so I just want to call you out and appreciate the honesty there.
Yeah.
It'd be really easy for somebody in his position to be, oh, yeah, yep, all that's great. Yep, we try and do that as best we can. And yep, sounds great. But truth is, the financial returns that I showed on that last slide, you haven't seen yet. And we're not quite sure why that is. And so one of the things we're committed to with Thriving Michigan is not having this just be rah-rah, right? We want to deal with this and really investigate this together as a statewide conversation so that we can look at it. And it could be that there's some gaps, in what you're doing, and maybe those things get unfolded and perhaps that's that. Or it could be that there's some unique factors at play in your company and in this region that that are different than
I'd
some
like
of
to
these
think
big
it's more
national brands.
regional than it is
Yeah, right.
organizational.
Totally. But I just, to call it out, I really appreciate you raising that so that we can talk about it a little bit. And I do want to dive in a little, right? I don't know a whole lot about the banking industry in general and the independent banking industry in particular. But my sense is that over the last decade, say, it has been, there's a lot of consolidation. And so aren't you one of the last independent banks in the area?
Well, I wouldn't say one of the last independent banks, but certainly, we did just recently complete a merger in 2014 with another local bank, and I absolutely believe there's going to be more and more of that's going to have to occur. And there's a lot of banks. We're a $350 million bank. As banks go, that's pretty small. But there's a lot of other banks that operate in this state that are smaller than us. They're 50 million, 75 million, 125 million dollars. I think it would make sense, and I'd like to think that we could be the aggregator of these banks so that we could continue to kind of control and shape our destiny, continue to support our communities. Because one of the things that, for us to be successful, and I believe for Alpena to be,
not to be too cliche about it, but a force for good, a force to help this community address some of the things that it needs to address and have the capital to do so. That kind of focus would probably turn a lot more just focused on shareholder returns were you to sell and get bought up by a big bank that doesn't have roots here. So in terms of purpose, there is that value in that vision that there is a sort of a small community focus, smaller bank community focus that is part of what you think is right and should be for a community. So as we're looking at purpose, there's that. Now let's dive deeper and look at vision, right? So if indeed there's that purpose, where are you in terms of a vision?
We don't have we got to cure cancer in 10 years. We're not there. We're a long way from there. Our vision, again, is more about just retaining our independence so we can continue to support the communities. And that, whether it's as the aggregator of other smaller community banks, we're really proud of the fact that we were able to merge with another bank and have no disruption. We're the first bank in Northeast Michigan to have gone through this, and we got through it successfully. So to me, that's a template to prove to prove to others that, if you want to partner with us, that we can make it work.
Yeah.
And so we'll point to that certainly as one of the selling pieces and marketing ourselves is the aggregator if there's willingness to have that conversation with us. But again, we don't have we got to cure cancer in 10 years kind of vision, because I'd be lying if I said that.
Yeah, no, got it. And so it's a multi-year process. It's done with stakeholders in mind. It's 3 to 5 years for many organizations to really have the conversations to refine this into something like 2020, we're going to be a regenerative, a restorative enterprise, right? And even for them, that was long enough out. They had no idea how to do it. They had no clue what they were going to do. But they took the engineers together and said, with the speed of innovation and all that kind of stuff, it seems like we might be able to hit that mark by 2020. The CEO demanded that we give him a date. There's the date, right? And so that was kind of how it came for them, and it took them years to figure out even how to think about it, how to measure it. No idea. So it's a process. It's a process that you can choose to undergo if you want, but again, the power in it is. In the Dave's Killer Bread example, you're not coming to work to bake bread. You're coming to work to solve recidivism. And actually, even one of Ray Anderson's employees, there's an anecdote in the book that's a later chapter than where we are just yet, but I'll say it now, where he starts teaching other CEOs about this as part of the vision. And there's one CEO of a very large beverage company, very large and well-known, that is real skeptical as he's talking about what they're doing with this vision that they've got. They end up calling it Mount Sustainability, and they're trying to climb the various faces of Mount Sustainability to reach the summit of regenerative enterprise by 2020. But he says that at one point during a break, the CEO goes down to the factory floor and flags a forklift driver and tries to talk to him for just a second. And she says to him, so what do you do here? And he says, I'm here to help us find an environmentally sustainable future. And she's like, oh my God. It's like a cult or something. It's crazy. They're all doing this, but it really is the context that guy had. And at one point he cuts her off, knowing that she's a big somebody. cuts her off and says, ma'am, I'm sorry, if I don't have this spool of material on that machine in a minute and a half, we're going to blow our numbers for the day, I got to go. And that level of commitment and engagement from an employee that believes in that purpose, and that, again, you can say this, but if your actions don't match, it might get people riled up for a week or a month. But if there's no there, don't even start. It's not a gimmick. It's not a tactic. It's genuine or don't do it. So that's just some of this. Now, with that, I want to open up to questions both from the live audience here and for those of you that are here via live stream. Text Elise for those live streams if you have any questions that you'd like to put to me or to Mike about anything that's been presented today. His experience, he'll be honest, and I'll be honest about kind of what we've got in terms of what Conscious Capitalism has to say about things. So. What can let's get this conversation going. Who's got questions? Challenges, anything? Please. Thank you. So the launch event is here in Alpena. We've got, and Elise, you may have to help me with some of the dates that we've got here, but the next event is in Traverse City on the 24th of February. The one after that in March is it Ann Arbor?
Yes, Ann Arbor.
Ann Arbor, that's Elise on the mic back there. She's my partner in Thriving Michigan. We have 4 partner people that are part of Thrive Consulting Group, so Elise is back there as one of those as well. So Ann Arbor is in March. In April, we are, yes? Thank you. Jackie's saying that we will be happy to send you all of the dates so that you can come to future ones, or if you've got people in other places that you can show. But we are doing 12 of them in 2016. There's a different Chamber of Commerce that's going to be hosting each, and so we'll be traveling around the state to present this stuff, hopefully picking up some momentum along the way. Other questions? Please.
Do you have a base cost or percentage cost for companies that would try to implement these things if we didn't to initiate it?
So I think, let me just say it back to make sure I got the question right. Is there like a base cost or a budget number, a percentage for somebody that was trying to implement this kind of stuff? Is that right? Just so that you can kind of figure out what would it cost to do this stuff?
Yeah.
No, I don't. I think that the thing that I would put back to you is if you're kind of clear on something for purpose, and like Barry Waymiller, right? Bob Chapman, the guy that's the $2 billion machine manufacturer, his purpose is his people. That's the way that he measures it, is that all of the profits in the company are fuel in the tank so that he can do the work of building these great cultures. And so it doesn't have to be that you're going to give money to community foundations or that you're gonna give people X amount of raises. But I think that what I'd suggest is if you're kind of thinking about purpose-wise, do what you can now. And even if it's no money at all. But there are ways to kind of transact without money that you can kind of figure out whatever you can do. The first baby step on your way to purpose, it should, says our bard of the boardroom, David White. He talks about how each step reveals the next. And so whatever that first step is, that's, well, we could at least do that, and then see what happens. Please.
What's the process in getting all of the employees to kind of buy into that purpose, that culture? How do you get that started? Do you get everybody in a room? Do you go on a retreat? Something that evolves slowly? Does it have to go like you talked to a century of your employee meetings that you have? One day it's concentrated. But Nathan, how do you roll that out? How do you get that started?
I think that there's probably as many ways as there are companies. It's a lot of times they say that you really do need buy-in from the leadership team. And the more specific you can get about purpose and vision, the better, so that people are clear what they're buying into. But sometimes you won't be clear. And so it's just kind of engaging them in the conversation around this that is the thing. I know Kevin Schluter is about to start with sort of a presentation on this to his team to get them engaged in the, what is our purpose here? What is fulfilling for us? They've got a thing where they make like screw products. They don't make screws. They make little, they start with huge bars of metal and then make little complicated pieces that go into like airbag assemblies and things like that. And they ship about 3 million parts a month. But the way that they've got that is because it's airbags and seatbelts and stuff like that, is that they make the parts that save lives. And so that's a different context than we need to make sure we don't have many defects, right? We need to keep our defect level below X. For them, it is these are the parts that save lives, and they will only save lives if they work. And so is that a vision? Maybe. It's definitely a purpose. But that was just something that actually a brand person came up to them and said, oh, that's what you guys do. And they were like, gosh, I guess it is. And so that has sort of become part of the company culture. And so for them, the way that it kind of got going was just a couple of employee meetings about, you know what we're really doing here? Look at this. And then the organization change literature talks about that one of the biggest mistakes people make with this is that they under-communicate the purpose and vision, they say by a factor of 10. So you do an employee meeting, but then all of the other communication in the business is still about the stuff that it was about before, and you wonder why people aren't focused on it. So it's got to be something that is consistent enough that it really gets in the water of the company. And so getting it started, I'd suggest just kind of getting a conversation going with the leadership team. And I'm curious, you've done this at a fairly high level. How did it work for you when you came in? How has it progressed for you?
I mean, I think that the seeds were well planted before I got there. So for me, it was just a matter of a continuation of what my predecessor had started. So it does start with it absolutely does begin with the leadership, though. I mean, at the end of the day, I think the personality of the company is going to very much follow the personality of the leadership of the company. And there's just no way around it. If you got autocratic people at the top pointing fingers and barking all day long, I think that you're going to get an organization that very much appears that way to the community. And so I think it's real simple. To me, there's not a big investment here. If it's all just about starting with creating a good culture inside, that doesn't necessarily take a monetary commitment. That's just about respect. It's real easy. There's not much cost to being respectful of the people you work with, and no matter where they are in the organization. And so I'd say that's a real easy spot to begin.
Yeah, and one of the things we're going to be focusing on in the third quarter of this year is actually leadership. And one of the big things there that is surprisingly overlooked in many cultures is the power of acknowledgement. And it doesn't cost you anything to really acknowledge people genuinely, right? Don't make it like good job, good job, good job on the way out the door every day. But a genuine, heartfelt acknowledgement for what people are doing within the company, and it can be a mini Snickers. There's one story. There's a great book called "Lead from the Heart," where it's a big regional manager for a big bank that is in charge of 30-some branches, and so the branch managers always come, and there's the different metrics that they're supposed to be hitting, and it's very much a shareholder-based kind of a thing, but he gets acknowledgement really right with just a little bag of candy. And so every time there is one bag of candy that goes to somebody at each one of these monthly meetings, and it became like getting a really fancy glass award to be the one that got the bag of candy. And so you can kind of establish these traditions. There's a company in Boston that's called Next Jump that does this on a really, really high level, and they just do little plastic Smurfs. So at their staff meetings, you just get a little Smurf, and so there's some like symbol and all that kind of stuff that's invested in it. But having people feel really acknowledged, there's 1,000 ways to do it, but that is one of the key things for starting to build a really safe, great culture that has people feel good about what they're doing every day.
We've constantly striven to try to come up with new ideas. 2015, the bank invested in the fish culture. Are you familiar with that? The Seattle Fish Market?
Yeah.
So anyway, there's some of you might be familiar with. There's a Seattle Fish Market. It's an outdoor fish market in Seattle where people, the guys who work there, and the guys who own it, run it, have fun. They have fun. You might have seen videos of them on television throwing fish across the counter, and and it always draws a big crowd because these people are having fun genuinely while they work. Well, because somebody recognized that these guys had something really cool going on there, they decided there might be something here we could actually sell here. We could teach this fish philosophy. Our bank purchased it in 2015, trying to stay out there and keep employees having fun at work. And so you talk about the You know, we get emails, I see emails all day long, or often, about, you know, we have mystery employees who are doing nice things for coworkers all the time. They'll take the time to know that this person really likes ranch Pringles. And then one day there'll be an email and say, whoever dropped 6 boxes of ranch Pringles in my office, you're the best, thank you for that. Or it could be Hershey Kisses or whatever the case is. My point is, though, it's just about people anonymously doing nice things for one another at work, and this goes on continuously. Well, that's cool. I mean, that's kind of what you're talking about right there. I think, you know, again, we spent the money. We took it was a training process throughout the entire year. Every 2 weeks, we had to sit down. We had a training guide. We watched videos in small groups of people, but everybody throughout the entire organization was involved in it, and it was a year-long commitment. But again, it helped create the kind of culture I think is important, so that people don't have to go home and throw the hat in the door first.
And just to point it out, right, that's when we talk about vision, right, and not just this kind of vision, but the way that we're all constantly assessing whether stuff is genuine or whether it's just a ploy, right? It's stuff like that, demonstrated commitment and consistency over time, that I would assert has many, if not all, of your employees feel like, no, this is for real. And so that's the other piece that's on us as leaders, is that, you know, what Bob, emotional intelligence and all that kind of stuff. But if it's consistent, then, you know, it's just not going to work. So it's the kind of thing where you really do have to live it personally, and then your actions will be consistent with it. And you can kind of build that kind of culture. And if you think about, you know, back to us as tribes, just, you know, as I'm thinking about you know, with people doing Pringles and just kind of doing the nice stuff for each other, one of the points that Sinek makes is that when you have a leader who eats last, the title of the book, Leaders Eat Last, right? When the leader recognizes that their duty is to keep the quote-unquote circle of safety, so that we are a team here and that there isn't infighting and that you are safe when you're in the tribe. We together will face the challenges of the saber-toothed tiger, the warring tribe, the competitor business that is trying to drive us out, the bank that wants to buy us and lay half of you off. When they are safe within that circle of safety, you have things where everybody puts each other before themselves. It's not totally self-sacrificing because the culture takes care of them. But when they observe that that's what the leadership is doing, it creates it. And by contrast, when they observe that the leadership is looking out for numero uno, that's what they do too. They follow the leader. And so, you know, that's where transparency goes to die. You know, no, I'm not going to tell you about the problem that I'm seeing here because it'll make you look good. The sabotaging your manager, a lot of that stuff is because of those kinds of cultures. And so it's, you know, you have culture. There's a story about the old fish and the young fish, and, right?
Kevin
Yeah.
Schluter.
Yeah.
Can you expand on your comment of putting your shareholders in a balanced position instead of an elevated position?
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. So this is from a business professor named Ed Freeman, who is one of the leading theologians and researchers in stakeholder theory, and he's got it's a little bit of a slog to get through, but there's real gold in it. And it's his latest version of the book called Stakeholder Theory. He's been writing on this for 25 years. But in it, he really talks about that the management philosophy that prioritizes returns to shareholders above all else, that is willing to trade off customers, trade off employees, you know, that will, to make the quarterly numbers, lay off people, you know, that style of management empirically produces subpar results for shareholders compared to the management philosophy that really does want to create value and take good care of all of the stakeholders. And it sort of stands to reason, right? So if you think that you're the deputy manager of the tribe 15,000 years ago, and your number one aim is to make sure that you are filling your leader's plate with food, right? That you are more nuts and berries and all the best cuts of meat. Oh, nope, just here. You all are going to help me do this. And I don't care too much if you have enough to eat. I don't care too much if you're sick, and I don't care if you're tired. This is our goal. It's not quite the same as if we together are going to make sure that we all have enough. And the truth is, when you're all motivated to make sure that we all have enough, this happens. But it happens for everybody, right? So it actually is something where it's like a rising tide lifts all boats when you get the stakeholder management right. And we call it theory, but they've been doing empirical research on this for 30 years, and it's pretty clear. It's pretty clear that this is what we're talking about. You know, in the firms of endearment, the major things that they were measuring were the stakeholder examples. And there's, you know, all of those 4 spaces are mutually reinforcing. So it's not like you can do one and not the others. Usually, if you've got a good culture, you also have good stakeholder management because your employees are a stakeholder. And that usually comes from good leadership. And often, even if the purpose is making a good culture, there is some purpose there. So Kevin, that's kind of what I mean, is that there is the dominant philosophy that you really do need to put those folks first. And many investors think that that's where they belong. And they'll give you a ton of crap if you try and tell them that's not so. But it's not.
Agreed.
Yeah. Other questions? Last one. Anybody? Okay, cool. There's one other thing that I wanted to share, just to go philosophical for just another moment here. We've been talking about a lot of the data and a lot of the sort of the management philosophy and all this kind of stuff, but there's real personal benefit to this. You know, there's a lot of poets and philosophers and writers and thinkers that have pointed us this way for a long time. And some of the people that I've had a chance to work with that are fabulously successful and wealthy and have built huge companies will confess in an unguarded moment that they're just unfulfilled. There's no meaning. I got richer than I ever thought I was going to get, and I still have that hole. And our society has us want to fill that with more. The next target, the next growth, right? And that's the dopamine thing that we're talking about. You got your fruit, and you're eating it, and it's great, and it sure is nice when you hit that target, close that sale, but then you're left wondering what's next. And if we're honest with ourselves, I think that there's a lot that's there, and taking it a totally different way, even personally. For me, my experience is that this is just fulfilling. It's fulfilling on a personal level. And that might be the most compelling reason to do it, and to start thinking about this kind of stuff. I'm gonna take a little risk here, and there's a favorite little poem that was written in a book called The Prophet that some of you might know, but they talk about work actually pretty extensively in here. And there's one thing that I thought was appropriate, and that is that work is love made visible. When we're talking about those universal human values, it really all does kind of come back down to something like that. Work is love made visible. It's maybe a little bit too much, but I'm going to go there. If you can't work with love, but only with distaste, it's better that you should leave your work and sit at the gate of the temple and take alms of those who work with joy. For if you bake bread with indifference, you bake a bitter bread that feeds but half a man's hunger. And if you grudge the crushing of the grapes, your grudge distills a poison in the wine. So for all of us with what we do every day, it matters. It matters to you, it matters to the community. And so I invite you to just take a look and see where it is that you can raise the bar. And again, many of the people here are probably already doing this a lot. A couple of people already that have said, I've been doing this for 10 years. I just never knew what it was called. And that's true. There are many, many, many people. This just makes sense. And so my guess is we actually probably skew that way in the room. So you probably are the leaders in Alpena that are making this thing happen. But if you see value in this and you can help us to spread the word and have this be a better business as usual in Michigan, that's what Thriving Michigan is. And again, you were here for the beginning. So thanks for being here. Jackie, you want to wrap us up?
Just quickly, Mike, thank you for participating. Thank you, everybody, for coming. There is a survey, which I mentioned. Please complete that and give it to Ashley on your way out. That way we can follow up with you if you'd like, and we can get some feedback for Nathan and Elise on how the program went. We're available after this if you'd like to talk more about it or ask questions. And again, thank you so much, everybody, for coming.
And please do fill out that survey. Thank you, thank you, thank you for being here. We will get better and better at this, and we'll do that because you're being honest in that survey. So please help me out.